very excited to kick off today's second oAT summer school session about unlearning people operations and customer success. I am the host, but also the participant of today's webinar alongside the wonderful and one and only Sarah Matthew. So really excited to be able to have a conversation that's been a continuation of a conversation we've not only had at oAT from the beginning of the summer, but far beyond that in terms of how AI and this technology is changing the functional areas of work. What is still true no matter what as we embrace these moments of change, and what actually is changing and how we can unlearn old things and get to a place of learning new. With that, I will introduce myself briefly and then pass it over to Sarah to introduce herself. I am Britt Gage, the founder of All Trades. We are a company of generalist operators who are embedded onto teams to help them operate and grow and scale effectively. I started of All Trades 5 years ago after a long-standing career in startups and small businesses as the generalist operator, as the person who was doing both people operations and customer success and probably a little bit of general operations and go to market and all the things for teams. And so as the person who has wearing many hats and now is building a company of people who wear many hats, one of which is connecting people and technology as part of the growth of the business. It's exciting to be able to be here and talk about something that I care so much about, especially on the people operations side, as as the human relationship becomes and investing and navigating what it means to have really meaningful human relationships in business becomes more and more important. Sarah, would love to pass it over to you to say hi and introduce yourself and your background a little bit.
Yeah. So I am Sarah. I'm currently in Albania. So if my power goes out, bear with me because that has happened like 5 times this week. Um, my background, like similar to Britt, very generalisty, right? Worked through a bunch of different um, industries. I worked in fashion, I worked in travel, I worked at startups, and I found my way just kind of by exploring and learning and unlearning along the way. My other life is that I work in mental health, and I think kind of mental health and how our brains work and the psychology of all of that go together with people and ops and customer success really nicely. And Britt and I can talk about this topic for for forever. And so I'm excited to kind of share what some of the learnings we've had over the last year, 2 years, 5 years, I don't know, however long, and see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, as Sarah and I prepped for this session, we pretty much turned on a note taker and just chatted about our experiences and laughed along the way. We were like, we could talk about this for hours. So we're really excited just to like share our passion around this work and really what we've seen. I, as I was reflecting on how to start this session with Sarah, I want to share that I know Sarah because she and I worked together at one of All Trades' first clients. Before Of All Trades was where we are today, 5 years strong with many, many generalist operators. The seat that I sat in was also being a client-facing generalist operator. And so I, quote unquote, drank my own Kool-Aid. I was the test. I was embedded onto early stage startup teams to help them grow and develop their businesses. And I was doing people ops, and Sarah came in doing customer success. And Sarah is one of those incredible operators that you can unleash on HubSpot and she can fix every little technical problem that you didn't know existed, but also will, like, when you see her in real time, bring you chocolate from Hawaii because she lived there and she wanted to bring something back from her hometown. Like, her ability to be technical and also human forward has always been incredible to me. It was what I connected with her on when we were together at this company. So having her now be part of oAT for a year. I think we're celebrating the year anniversary of her being here and just being not only an incredibly adept generalist operator, but a arbiter of culture and how it is to just like exist and be great in human relationships has been incredible. So it's really special to have Sarah here to contribute to the conversation because we've met in those really nice terms and then obviously transitioned to where we are today.
Britt's trying to make me cry before the session starts even.
It's true, Sarah. Anyway, let's kick us off. So, why did we decide to do people operations and customer success all in one session today? That sounds like completely different functional areas of an organization, and it is. However, really fundamentally, when we think about what AI has done right now in this technology in both of these functions, is that it changes how we manage, navigate, and nurture our human relationships. People operations is all about how you manage, navigate, and nurture the human relationships that you have inside of a team. Customer success is external to the people that you're serving, and both are equally important. And both we've noticed have similarities in how it's changed the work that we're connecting with humans on, and how it's a little bit different in both of those different areas. So as we spend time together today, we're going to start talking about people and culture, focusing on the things that we've learned. I'm going to give things as we talk in the small business view. Sarah's going to give the lens of the startup view. The reason for that is Of All Trades was a startup 5 years ago. A startup is just a company that isn't a company yet, right? It's an idea. You want to bring something into the world and you want to grow it quickly. And then as you grow it, when you have product market fit, you understand what it is, there's stability, then you can grow sustainably at scale and you become a small business into a larger business. That's technically what oAT has become. We were an idea of a different way to operate, a different way to build teams as a startup. And now, 5 years later, we've proven that this is a successful model in startups, in nonprofits, in local businesses, even in enterprise now. We're doing a lot of work with larger teams that need that operating support and figure out, and just the ability to figure out how to use AI at scale. And we've grown sustainably. We are a bootstrapped company that has been profitable since day one. So I'm speaking from the lens of oAT as the small business owner and Sarah as the startup person who is the generalist operator on startup teams. So we'll take all of the sections here with that lens on the people and culture side. Then we'll switch to customer success, and then we will answer questions as we go. If you do have questions along the way, feel free to throw them in the chat. We can answer them as we go. And just because I'm contributing to a section, Sarah will call on you if you have ideas and thoughts, and vice versa. Cool. So let's start thinking about people and culture specifically to small businesses. The work in people and culture right now is change management. People and culture and people operations includes general HR management. It includes employee engagement and recognition. It includes culture and team building. But within all of those things, for small businesses specifically, so much of the work right now is change management because so much is changing with technology and how people are working. And there is confusion, there's fear, there's this fear of missing out on a technology that people are like, I really need to adopt, but I don't know how. And so whether like on if for small businesses, what we're seeing, and I am as a small business owner, is if there is no people and culture department, the founder is the leader to be able to support people through experiencing these changes and changes with work, like meaningfully and thoughtfully together. So I think a lot of times we think about culture just happening. Oh, we have one or two people who are working together, and ultimately that means we have this culture and it exists. But culture has to be built on purpose, especially for small businesses, especially when it's led by the the founder of a team without necessarily having a full people and culture department, which is similar, obviously, to startups because most startups don't have a PNC person, like a dedicated PNC person. But when I think about small businesses that may or may not have HR or people internal support, really the thought of how do we build a culture on purpose that helps people navigate these AI changes is really important. So some things that I've seen and we have seen. First is the proliferation of AI note takers and how it's changing the people and culture infrastructure within an organization. So we're all running around doing a lot of things, and we sit in a meeting and we throw on an AI note taker. And because we know the AI note taker is there and capturing all of the information, we forget to actively listen to each other. So some of the people and culture work that I'm seeing coming up is facilitating conversations that normally would have happened with intention and care, but are losing some of that intention and care because of the AI note taker. So the ability to create an environment where people feel like, great, I have this AI note taker. It's going to help me with my work, but it's not going to fundamentally change how I show up as an employee, how I show up as a team member. How can I really connect with people on the team? And I know, Sarah, you and I had a lot to talk about with that. So I'm curious how it comes up for you. The second is that if you don't have an HR function, especially, small businesses that might not be growing at the stage where they have an HR function, it's still not an excuse to not think about like building your people and culture thoughtfully and intelligently, especially in this moment in time. Because as people are starting to adopt this technology and they're not totally sure exactly the ways that the organization is running, it can be really disorienting without feeling like they have a person to connect to on the team to help them navigate these changes. The last piece is unlearning technology first. What Sarah and I were talking about before is this moment in time mirrors a lot of the moment in time of early SaaS, where you had, especially the like SaaS bots, where people were so excited about implementing technology that they didn't necessarily understand. And ultimately, what happens is they start chasing the productivity of the tool and losing out on the opportunity of developing the relationship. So much of what we're seeing in terms of like small businesses in how things are changing is that AI is just magnifying the typical like happenings that happen when people are working together in business. And instead of rushing to move towards the technology, to think about how the relationships can work really well together first before implementing anything from there. The last piece is this new moment where we have both humans and agents working together. And ultimately, the connection of those two things means you have two different cultures that are occurring within an organization. You have the team that is working with each other, like the actual humans that are working together. Then you have the agents that are working with the humans, and sometimes the agents that are working with each other. Culture creates process without rules. So technically, if you just have a way that everybody is working and a way that the agents are being set up, it's creating these internal processes that can be very confusing for people to understand and know how to manage. And so, as individuals on small business and teams start to use this technology more and more, what we're seeing is there is a gap in how people are codifying their experience with working with the agents. Some people are really AI forward and they are using this technology to scan their email and respond to their coworkers. And if they get a message from a coworker, they may go to Claude and figure out how to respond and copy and paste that response into the conversation that they have with a team member. And the more and more we build agents to support our individual work, the more there may be confusion for people to understand whether they're connecting with another human or they're connecting with an agent. And so, really thinking about people and culture within a small business is helping people understand as you start to develop this technology competency for yourself, as you want to use it more and more to be a supportive helper, which you totally should for your business. What is actually happening to the culture? What is actually happening to the people relationships, to the coordination, the collaboration, the trust? What is meaningfully happening there? So it's not necessarily about spending time in terms of the culture to set like, okay, you must use an agent in this way, you must not use an agent in this way, but just really understanding the competencies across the team and encouraging human interaction and creating experiences where human interaction is still a baseline for team engagement. Sarah, any thoughts before I go into your thoughts on the startup side?
You're gonna find that they're similar, slightly different and similar. The If you want to hit my side, I think this will help. This is all about the note taker is all about the loss of, for me, like listening skills, active listening skills. Having just gone through a whole social work program, you do whole courses on active listening and how to tell if somebody is actively engaged and if the person you're talking to can tell if you're actively engaged. I would say six years ago now when COVID first hit and people had to move from being in a room to being in a Zoom room. Um, there was a shift then of, okay, is this person paying attention to me? They're on my screen. And it's easier to tell when they're in person if they're disengaged. Now I have to recognize from the top up, like, are they engaged? And now with this note taker, people are losing the capacity to actually pay attention and respond in the moment. Um, Even a text message or an email over a phone call, you have time to sit and process, which could sound like a great thing, except you're not reacting to the thing that's happening. It's a similar um, concept, and I think that that's coming up quite a lot for startups because they are so tech advanced and AI focused that they're saying, hey, this will increase my productivity, which is fair. And I think if it's done in a conscientious way, can be really great. Even the note takers, people who are generalists have tons of different contexts. It's very helpful, but you have to then be very intentional about how you listen. Um, we swap to my next slide. Yeah, it's all about intentionality. And so this is nothing that's changed, right? Everybody who works in people ops has known forever that you have to be intentional about creating these spaces, but even more so now because AI does half of the work for us, half the work. Um, but you have to still use your brain power. And I think that that's the part that is a little scary sometimes, especially in the startup world, is like how much power we give away to the AI. And without the intentionality of how we build and how we build our teams and our culture, then you're also giving away some of that power as well. Everything on this slide is from a retreat that one of my clients just had. And I went very analog. Let's do as much as possible off of our computers. Didn't have a single session where we were on the computer. We did have granola, ironically, on the whole time so that we could remember some of the things, but it was on a laptop in the corner. And everything else was paper and pens or giant sticky board and everybody writing down their stuff. It prevented people from Googling things or finding like what is the best way to say something. We talked about adjectives that every employee brought to the company. And that was one of our favorite activities because you got to hear all the nice things people think about you, but never actually say. And so you had to create that space for that. And I think that active listening and the intentionality, if they go together, really well done in a way that's really well done, it creates this creativity and this space for those conversations that take this wild tangent and then you get this awesome product idea at the end of it. And I was telling Britt the story of like the conversations that had the most impact on the product after were the ones that were people literally sitting next to a pool chit-chatting about a client and they were just like, oh yeah, that actually, yeah, this thing happened and oh, this happened with this client too, XYZ. And it's just like right next to the pool. And I think for me, those moments become less when we use AI because we don't think about this tangent. Like, hey, this our client said this thing about a pool once, and then all of a sudden you're all the way over here. Um, And then the last thing I put in here, it's one that I have mixed feelings about, which is also just about remote work in general. I love remote work. I'm in a foreign country remote working, right? But the in-person meeting also sets a tone for the relationship and it changes relationships, I think. The trust that you have in somebody in grows when you feel comfortable with them in person. So I think that intentionality also of let's take not just AI out of the room and not just technology out of the room, but bring the people together in one room. If it's at a retreat or it's even if you're virtual, like everybody get together at a time and eat lunch and don't have a topic of conversation. Actually, just have a space and a room for that purpose. So a lot of the things that Britt was talking about in terms of needing to really think about how we build the culture, that is the same as it's always been, but now the ways in which we do it are very different. And I'm not anti-AI, right? I all the time, and so does Britt, but it's where and when do we use it versus where and when is the human still the right thing and the right first step. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm an analog person.
Yeah, totally. I think it's funny because when we were talking about this section to prepare for the conversation today, we were like, okay, so what AI tools should we talk about for people operations? Like the probably most prevalently people are either using the AI tools that exist within their HR tools already. Like what is happening in Gusto that can make it easier with an AI tool or uh the conversations people are having with Claude, but it's not like we are seeing specifically AI tools. The bigger unlearning and learning was just how much intentionality is required right now in people operations in all aspects of it. Navigating relationships with your employees, navigating how you do things as a team. That stuff is far more important than what AI note taker you're using or what tool the entire team is adopting across the team for just general like people happiness and how a company is working. More for you here, Sarah, too.
Yeah. And even on that note, like the development of those who work with and under you, I think the use of AI also is a very interesting change, right? People operations is also about developing those who are junior into these senior and awesome workers and people and whatever we can give them. But um, AI takes away a lot of those early learnings that people have when they do something the wrong way 15 times first, right? Sometimes you do have to have that experience. So balancing where we say AI use is good and where we say AI use try to do it yourself first and then use AI to see like how you can improve it. I think it's that also has been on my mind too, is like how do you use it with your employees to develop them into even better employees? Still working on that. But the other big thing that I'm seeing on the people ops side, and like maybe a little bit more ops than people ops, but just generally what size company we're building for. So founders love to go, sorry, Britt, but founders love to go from one person to two people to 500 people. And that's right. Like the goal of a lot of startups is build, 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 sell, sell, sell as quickly as possible, grow. And I think in the past, you kind of had to work your way through it because there wasn't AI to just like, hey, go into Claude, build a whole system that you don't need yet in one day or 2 days. Um, you had to really build to it and it slowed you down in a little bit in probably a good way. So I think a lot of people are skipping the in-between steps. And something that trying to automate processes that have not been lived through yet, which is crazy to me. And so, if you have a Google Drive and you have different folders, that might be exactly what you need for three people. Like you don't need a whole Claude cowork necessarily. Like it could be great, but if you're spending your time working on that instead of working on your product, your company's not going to get to 500 people. Your company's going to stop at three. And I think that that's the thing that I think about a lot is where are we spending our time when it comes to AI? AI is awesome. And for people in ops, it can make life so much better in certain ways, but we just know when to stop and when to go. And I think like a new hire, having context is super helpful. But if it takes you as a founder 5 days to build the context, and then that context is going to change as you bring in the next person, then we're repeating the work over and over in a different way. Um, I think the last thing is if the AI is creating the context based on feedback. So like if you put out a culture survey and like it says XYZ things are happening in your culture, people are happy, unhappy, whatever it is, great. Um, it'll tell you you need to do this thing to improve employee morale. Well, there's probably a whole bunch of steps before that, before people were upset that you're missing because you're not talking to people. Instead, you're saying, oh, well, the AI will cover it with the process that we created. So in that, you have to think about that is a great tool for part of the process. Where does it belong on the process? And how do I still keep my hands in things so that, you're seeing the signals before it happens. It happens on people ops side, it happens on the product side. Like those trends can tell you, hey, we're early stage startup. Our products go this way or this way, but you're not seeing the signals. So you keep going this way and there's nothing to go there. And I think a lot of that is lost when we build for the future without thinking about the present. And in people ops, it's all the time, right? Like 5 people is so different than 500. We don't need to build for that yet. And I think there's a fine line between wanting to be efficient and effective and building to scale, and then overbuilding or over engineering, which I think tends to happen a lot. Britt was talking about like the FOMO people have basically, and they have it. They're like, well, I can't be behind, so I need to build it now.
Totally, totally. Kelsey on our team, who is our head of alignment, one of the operators who's been with us for a long time, she always uses this phrase building in the wrong direction. Like, and the only way you know how to build in the right direction is either you've lived it or you understand the humans that you're building for, whether that's your employees internally and the people on your team or externally as we shift to the customer success side in what they've experienced and how to build in the right direction, to build the right thing, to build enough and to not overbuild. This was like the engineering problem for a long time is like engineers are super excited to build because they like building, but that doesn't mean they're building the right thing. That's why the product function exists, is to be the translator between the customer and the engineer. And now, as the org chart is collapsing because generalists are can do much more, we can do much more with AI. All of that learning can be collapsed too in a meaningful way. Well, then that turns us to customer success. So when I think about CS for a small business, like all small businesses are customer first. Many people who have started a small business are like, I was the customer, I am the customer. Like we are so lucky at oAT to support so many different types of businesses because having a generalist operator on your team is super valuable, whether it's the local dentist across the street or the brand consultancy. Same feeling for those people is that we really care about who our customer is. That's often why they have long-standing not relationships, businesses. They exist and continue to exist because they are so customer focused and they care so much. But if they over automate, then they automate away the magic that is that relationship with a customer. And so, in that same way, it's really easy to be like, oh, well, I could get more touch points and emails out to my customer. I could send more marketing, like I can connect with them more. But if you are automating away the personal connection, suddenly you're not close enough to the customer to actually be able to mean meaningfully develop those relationships in time. So every customer's needs are different. You might have like people. It's funny. I say this a lot at oAT. We are generalist operators, which means we can solve more than one problem at one time. But people don't solve general problems. They solve specific problems. And everyone's specific problems are different. Everybody as a customer has a different need. And so a great example at oAT is when we send proposals to potential people who are interested as part of oAT, that was a very manual process before AI. It took up a lot of time for me to have conversations with people who might be interested in bringing a generalist onto the team, talking to the generalist about the things that we think that we could do to support with them, creating a document, iterating over and over and over. Then, with the magic of AI, it was great. Let's actually build an operating system that you throw in our AI note taker notes, you throw in, some back and forth Word docs that were collaborated with across people on the team, and out spits this beautiful proposal. And if we sent those proposals as is, they we would never continue to be a business because it would be so over productized that it wouldn't truly align with the needs of the customer, and it would sound like every other proposal that they got out there, laden with M dashes, and it's this, not this, right? It We've even put into our proposals, this part is written by Britt. No editing. This is just human to human saying, hey, I hear you. This is how I think we can help you. And then here's a part that we used AI to support because this is very granular and it helps us quickly solve your problem, but it maintains our ability to really listen and to be with you in that relationship. So like automate away some of the relationship stuff, but not things that matter is obviously what's really important. Again, for small businesses, there is no customer success team. There's no customer support. Often it is the founder, or maybe it's one other person on the team. But continuing to know who owns that customer relationship and having some closeness to it as more opportunities exist to automate some of that, like, manual administrative work away is extremely important. And then again, this is the same thing with PNC, the PNC section is like rushing to tech, rushing to tech. Okay, it takes a lot of time to email a customer. It takes a lot of time to whatever in that customer success space, in the client relationship space. Great. What needs to be judgment work? What requires human touch? And then what is rote? We talk a lot at oAT about the like two different types of work that exist, and like because so much of our work is outside of the org chart. So because we're just looking at the whole body of work outside of specific functions, we're like, all right, of all the things that a business is doing, there's two different types of work. There's the rote work, there's the like stuff with very clear inputs, very clear outputs. Ultimately, something like that can be automated away, and maybe it's automated away to an agent. Maybe it's, like Sarah was saying before, something you should do first before you automate it away, but it's not actually, it's the thing that is, if you give it to an agent or automate it away, it's not going to actually matter in the client relationship. But then there's the judgment work. There are the nuances. Sarah, you have a slide upcoming I'm excited about for this. It's the like little things that make a true relationship that if you completely automate that away, suddenly you lose the magic of actually being in a relationship with the people that you care about. Okay.
I one thing that you said about the emails to or proposals where you write this is from Britt and this is the AI, I think that transparency is so key to trust with your customers because if they feel like, hey, the work that you do, I could just put my inputs into Claude and get the same thing, then why are they paying you, right? So that is a huge learning, I think, for me as a person, and then also just in general across client success. Use it to automate your work, of course, but be transparent about where it shows up and how it shows up and what is actually your differentiator. If you go into a room and anything you say or type or email can be recreated by a bot, then your value diminishes. But if you're honest about what you used and what you didn't, it creates that trust is just so key. And so I think all of my green sides are quotes that I just got really upset about or really passionate about when we were talking. But I told Britt this has not changed since ever. But if you haven't heard from your client success manager in 6 months, or if you haven't heard from your client in 6 months, when they call you the next time, it's unlikely going to be, I'm going to renew. It's probably going to be, oh, I haven't thought of you, or I'm just not going to renew, or let's just cancel it. I feel like that's a very common theme and nothing that has changed, right? In a lot of ways, client success has always been like that. If you haven't heard from somebody in 6 months, you're probably in a little bit of trouble. Great. But the way AI has come in to client success um, has been really interesting in the startup world. A lot of companies took this view of AI bots can replace customer success. And that is a true misunderstanding of what customer success is. Client success, customer success is not customer support. It's not customer marketing materials. It's not customer education. It's client success. And that is built fully upon human interaction and relationship. And it's a pretty stark reminder when you see how AI is built for this function to know that people don't understand what client success is. As somebody who's worked in the space for a very long time, I feel like if you tell somebody not in tech what it is, they're like, what does that mean? What does that do? It's the same problem because you can't explain that to AI very well, that it's this whole range of things. You could be support, you could be education, you could be all these things, but at the end of the day, it's that relationship that really matters. So if you click the next slide, Britt. I think it's probably the slide you're talking about, but AI can really help you scale, right? There's so many things that it's good at, and I'm never going to discount that. It will catch you if you've forgotten to contact a client for 6 months, right? As somebody who has had a client load of like 100 sometimes, like it happens. Like I, nobody's gonna lie. Um, and it could send like a check-in email. It could do all of the things, and it will get you to 90%. But it's also not going to remember the story your client told you over drinks that one time about their dog's favorite treat being like pepperoni sticks, and then you bringing it up 6 months later, right? Like it's
And you
not going
being Sarah and like bringing it to a meeting. That like thoughtfulness is, yeah. Anyway, keep going.
But that you can't do that, right? Like AI can't tell you to do those things. And even if it had those inputs, it might not think to do that. And it could if you train it really well, but the way most people use AI, it's not doing that. And so I think about this, right? Like if somebody takes a trip, they go on vacation, they tell you, hey, I'm going to Greece, like I'll be out for a couple weeks, but let's meet in, the end of the month. Great. When they come back, the first thing you say is, oh, how was your vacation? And then if you've been there, you talk about it. AI is not going to prompt you to do those things. It's you building a relationship with somebody. If your friend goes on a trip and they come back and you don't ask them about that, they're going to be like, what are you doing? But a client won't say that. They just will remember in the back of their head that you don't care that much. Whether it's subconsciously or consciously, they will think that. And that affects the relationship. And so somebody told me this quote when I first started in client success. Nobody cancels on someone who knows their kid's name. And I don't know my clients' kids' names all the time, right? But it is that much harder when you have built this connection with somebody to just leave. And in client success, a huge part of your job is renewals, right? And it can be really hard. Sometimes you work at a startup where your product doesn't really work. I'm so sorry. It just is part of life. But clients who have a relationship with you will work through it. They'll figure out, they'll be your partner, they'll help you build, they'll help you edit, etc. But that's because you started with the human element from the beginning. AI can help you figure out what those different edits are and iterations are. They cannot build, I'm calling it they, like they're human. AI cannot build this human connection. There's just something so elusive about that away from technology that just cannot be duplicated. So I think AI is a great tool. And so the last like little bucket is the right frame. AI should have a place in client success, and it will help you get to the doorstep, right? It will get you there, close to there. But to open the door, go inside and have a conversation, you just need a human. AI is not going to go do that for you. And this is again like similar to the other people on ops side. There's also a development thing. If you allow junior whoever's across the board to use AI for everything, then you will never have somebody who can get into a room and talk about it. I had a client who has a younger client success manager, and They needed to go in front of their first client, and they had prepped everything, perfect deck, perfect whatever. Even had like notes and everything. And I said, let's get into a room and just practice. Let's just get on a Zoom call, pretend I'm the client. I'll be the nice one. This person will be the mean one, and just have at it. And it was such a good learning opportunity because we covered all kinds of stuff that were not on the slides, not in the notes, nothing like that. But when he then went into a room with the client, it's not knowing the answer, it's being ready for the unknown. And I think that that's part of the human part of CS that is both stressful but also so important is learning what to do when you don't have the answer. AI always has the answer, but we as humans don't, and that's okay.
Totally. I've been like waiting to be like, oh my God, it's just like the people ops with the change management piece. I think like client success is, hey, client, how's it going? Do you need to make a change? Are things changing for you? Let me help you understand what options you have in terms of changing and what's right for you in a way that's great for both businesses, right? Like, I don't want you to like cancel right now, but maybe that's the best thing for you. Or maybe you need something entirely different and you didn't even realize it was possible. Like so much of the work that we do at oAT when we're bringing a generalist onto a team is, they're not just getting the incredible generalist on their team, they're also getting me and other team members that are their people ops support. So when I'm talking to founders, it's like, awesome. I've had Sarah on my team for 6 months and she's been supporting our SOC 2 implementation and all of our operations. But you know what? We really need people help. Do we need another do we need another generalist? Like, I don't know. What should we do? And it's for me to be like, hey, did you know that there are options? Sarah could do this work. Sarah could do more work. We have another person that could support them. And they're like, whoa, I didn't even realize that was possible. Yes, because we developed a relationship with you and I'm with you to really understand what you need. I don't know how meaningfully like AI could do that. Even if we had an email assistant that was emailing our customers being like, "Hey, hope things are going well." That's pretty much to me the same thing as not speaking to somebody for 6 months and then all of a sudden being like, "Well, I got your marketing emails from them asking me to check if it was okay or not okay, but I didn't actually get to speak to you as a person, you know?"
Yeah, 100%. This slide is pretty much that same concept. When I told Britt the story that it was like a personal experience where I was just trying to do something. I think it was like an airline or a HubSpot or something. And oh, it was Google Workspaces. I just didn't know how to do something. And I wanted to talk to a human, and it said, you must use this AI chat. And it was a bot. And in theory, it's Google, right? It should be great. They're a huge company. It should be amazing. The bot could not understand what I was asking. I asked it 3 different ways, and it continued to send me, here's the education article for this. Here, just do this. And I went through this whole step and process, and it didn't do anything. I said, can I speak to a human? And at that point, you're just mad, right? It's not I wasn't upset at the beginning of my chat. 15 minutes later, I'm about to throw my computer out the window. And I'm like, can I just speak to a human? And literally, a human gets on and in 1 minute understood the question and then was able to get me the answer. And I got the thing done. To have spent 20 minutes to do that was extremely frustrating. So I think we're talking about success versus support. So this is a little bit on the support side, is when do you use AI and how do you use it properly? A normal customer complaint or question. Let's start with question. It's not usually a complaint first. It's a question. How do I do this? Or is this supposed to do this? XYZ. It's low stakes. Like you just answer the question via email, great. But now if that's not an option, there are companies who don't even have a support in email anymore, and they just have a bot. That's now frustrating. It would take a human 30 seconds to respond to that, and the person has to now spend 15 minutes to get to the answer. Now you're in this place where it's escalated. Now a human touches it, and the client's not coming in asking the question, content and happy and ready to learn. They're pissed off. And so now you've made what could have been just a normal customer success touch point an escalation point. And those things stick in the back of your head. And I think about this all the time when I'm going to renew a product. I always think about what was my experience like with that team when I needed help. And if it was really crappy, I really do think about, is it worth the hassle? Or should I switch providers? That's the same thing your customers are thinking. And so AI education and like the bots that you have for like how does the product work? What do you do? They can be so good, but it needs to be done intentionally. It's like that same word. Somebody has to sit down and think about what is the user experience before it touches a single customer. Don't test it out on your customers. I've also seen this happen. Like, oh yeah, let's just roll out a library and then like have this AI bot and it'll just work. That one bad customer has one bad experience, and then 10 more know about it. 10 potential customers know about it. I think about that all the time. I had a product that I tested really early before it had like really blown up. I had the worst experience with it. And it took me 5 years to come back to the product. It solved the exact problem I needed. It took me 5 years to come back to the product because not only did I have a bad experience, other people did too early on because they were testing functionality that didn't work. And it was actually in the support functionality. It was like the education part of it. I could have gone back to that product probably a year later and it would have been perfect. But I had such a bad experience with the engagement and the support that I got from the product that I wouldn't even look at it for 5 more years.
Oh my
And that's the
God.
same thing that we do all the time with these AI bots is we just roll them out. And unless you have a really good library behind it, unless you have a team looking at the support and actively managing the support channel as well, right? Not just allowing bots to answer things because um, they just can run the world, but maybe not effectively or actively doing well.
Yeah.
Um, I think that piece is also important is let's not do something that makes our lives easier, but annoys your customer. I think there's a fine line between using it in the right way and when you have enough time to build in that way properly. But yeah, as everybody can tell, I am not a proponent of AI chatbots for support most of the time because it takes me 15 minutes to get to what I need to do. But
Yeah.
there are also some companies that do it really well. And I'm like, great, I didn't have to talk to a human. That's awesome. And I solved the problem. But those tend to be companies that are slightly more established or have a whole dedicated CS function. And if you're not there yet, you probably shouldn't have an AI bot to replace your CS team.
Totally.
That's a hot take.
Well, it feels like the takeaway from both people and CS in terms of what does it mean to unlearn from then to now, like pre-AI to post-AI. When it was SaaS, you didn't have to define when you were using these things and how you were using it before. You could really experiment because there wasn't a direct connection between like an intersection with the human relationship. It wasn't as prevalent. Now, with AI, because it feels human, because it is replacing some of that human connection, deciding with intention when and how you're going to use this and having a like meaningful conversation of what you think the ramifications of that will be is the work. That is the work right now in being successful in this moment. Not how you use it, not what tool you use, just having the conversation and defining together when and how you're using it. So you're using it thoughtfully and allowing yourself to meaningfully continue to develop relationships, both internal to employees and external to customers. Would you say that's true, Sarah?
I think so. I think what enables being very thoughtful about what's enabling your relationship and what's taking away from it.
Mhm.
But in order to do that, you have to pull aside time. You have to pull aside people, talk to them, see how it impacts them, whether that's your employees, whether that's your clients. Um, all of those are equally as important as you grow small businesses, startups, nonprofits, whatever you work in, wherever sector you're in. How is the tool that I'm using? We do that about all our tools. How's the tool that I'm using impacting our clients, impacting our people? But now we have to do that about our AI tools. And I think we tend to skip ahead because it's such a tech focused world that we want to not lose anything. And then we don't have that conversation until it's too late, uh,
Mhm.
which is hard.
Totally. Um, Amazing. Well, we're going to open it up for some questions. If you do have questions, please put it in the Q&A section. Happy to answer them. We have some questions like pre-prepared based on what we were talking about to facilitate conversation, but as they come up in the Q&A, please throw them in there, and we will start. In the meantime, as you're starting to think about a question or something that you might want to share, um, I feel like you told some stories about this, Sarah, but is there anything else that's really interesting that you think is a good takeaway from people for people today in terms of like relationships that are quiet and how to actually meaningfully develop them with or without AI?
With or without? I think so, we talked a lot about the without, right? I think we did a lot of unlearning of AI, but one thing that can be very helpful, and especially for CSMs who are super overworked, because I know there's a lot of them out there. You may have 100 clients and figuring out how to have a schedule for talking to them and maintaining those relationships. If things like that are easy to use AI to help with reminders, with whatever AI tools there are to help ping you, give you a task, poke you to go do the thing. Those are great ways to use AI in continuing a relationship in what I deem like a positive way. When if it's just a reminder saying like, hey, make sure you check in with XYZ thing. People used to do this. I have a client who has somebody on their team, like an old school sales guy, who puts it on his calendar, like check in with this person, right? Great. If you have 5 clients, that's easy. Like put it on your stuff. Check in with this lead, check in with whatever. But if you have 100, it's really hard to remember some of that stuff. And I don't think any CSM or any people and ops person should have to take on the weight of remembering. That's a really easy thing to give to AI and use it to your advantage because now you're not going to forget the thing. Um, and then you have to sit with it and think about what is it that I want to say? Yes, but give yourself 20, 30 minutes to actually like sit, think about the account and do it. That's way better than waiting for an angry email about a issue that's happening and then realizing, oh, I haven't talked to this person in 6 months. Um, yeah, so there is good places for AI, just again with that lens of intentionality of
Totally.
how we use it.
Totally. We have a live question, so would direct this to you to Sarah to start, which is what specific problems is AI solving in client success and what KPIs have you seen move after implementation? So what's actually working for anything that you would use AI for, and is it meaningfully contributing to like traditional CS KPIs?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways where I think that this works really well. So one is in those tasks that I was just talking about, like those reminders, those everyday um like routine things. Those how to not forget is probably the best word for this. But when you're overloaded, that's a really good way that it solves. And you don't have to worry so much about what's in your head, right? That's a great way. The other one is also when clients transition. So I think that this is a really interesting use case that is being thought about more intentionally also across the CS space is if somebody leaves, what happens to all the knowledge in their head, right? You've built this human connection and now it's gone because the human is gone, but you still have this baseline of work that exists. So, using something like a Claude Cowork for your client files or whatever it is, or using AI on top of that, it doesn't rebuild the relationship with a new person, but it gives you a starting off point. And I feel like in the past, you usually started a back foot off because you're trying to catch up, but at least you're starting in with momentum and you can go into the relationship knowing what's happened, what hasn't happened without having to spend a week or 2 weeks reading up on the one client. It accelerates that. So I think that that's done really well. The KPIs is an interesting question. I don't think most companies have, at least from what I've seen, have not actually changed their KPIs. Whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't think AI has had enough of an influence yet where people are thinking about should I change my KPIs. Most are still, at least in like early stage startups, are still sticking to retention, logos, etc. Some of the ones that I have seen is speed to delivery sometimes. If you're using something that has AI involved, I have a client whose product is primarily AI. They're saying, well, can we bring down our time from whatever to client delivery from 2 weeks to 1 week? And is it in a meaningful way that's not impacting client success manager and also still giving a good product? So it's kind of hand in hand with client success and product, but I think that's also becoming a thing is closely linking those KPIs between client success and product, especially with AI products, which
Mhm.
is maybe another interesting world, but it's a good question. I don't have a good answer because I don't think it's one that people are ready for yet because AI is not used in the same way, and KPIs tend to stay pretty similar across the board until the whole community is ready to change their answer.
Totally. No, that's true. Kyle's just got a very forward-thinking question.
Yeah. Sorry, Kyle, I don't have an answer, but I'm thinking about
There we
it.
go. We have another question, which I'm excited about. I love the point you made around AI note takers and active listening. Can you talk about some of the concrete approaches that you've used to build a culture where AI notes are used to help with summaries and follow up while still ensuring active listening and generative conversations? I'll say a couple quick things. One, like sometimes you need people to touch the pot and to feel it's hot to actually be reminded. So like nothing says I wasn't listening than somebody being like, "Oh my gosh, did you have your note taker on in that meeting? Because I didn't have my note taker on." Like it it's a reminder every once in a while that like, oof, these things are happening and just saying out loud, "Hey, we need to be listening to each other because these AI note takers are doing this." Like being explicit with the implicit can sometimes be enough. Other parts of it is facilitation. So I think we're used to, especially post-pandemic, like being in Zoom rooms together and having meetings and not thinking about the need to facilitate because we've assimilated well to this transition of just being in this digital space together. And it still requires facilitation. So if you are leading a meeting, reminding people to engage and actually like turn your mute off. Like everybody be unmuted and ask interesting questions and call on people and surprise and delight. Like ask something that's surprising that re-engages people. We have to keep training ourselves to be present with each other because the same thing happens with or without the note taker if you're in a meeting and you're also on Slack or also texting your mom, right? Like they're just natural things that are going to happen and especially in a remote environment. So being like reminding and supporting each other, I think is important. Sarah, what do you think?
I think it's also about the culture that you build. So if you build a culture that is honest and transparent, then I can call you out in the meeting for not listening. And I think that that's an important thing. I'm not hurting your feelings. I'm just asking, hey, did you hear what I said about this thing? Or do you have any ideas? One thing we learn in social work school is to not ask yes or no questions and to ask open-ended and actually garner feedback. And I think that goes to Britt's point about facilitation is we all have to be facilitators. It's not whoever calls the meeting is the leader of the meeting. It's if you're in the meeting, you should be an active participant. If you're not an active participant, what are you doing in the meeting? Then it could be a learning opportunity. I guess I'll put that one to the side. But like besides that, you should have something to say. And if you don't, then the meeting should be an email. That's just like my take. But like if you have nothing to add to the meeting, then we probably shouldn't have had the meeting.
Old school basic business things. We had an event with a VC last night, and one of the things that came up was just so much of what's happening with AI right now is forcing the basic business practices. Like, are you listening to each other? Are you collaborating? Well, are you documenting your work? Is it in one place? Like some of that basic stuff is so important. Anyway, clearly Sarah and I can talk about this for hours. Um, Hope you enjoyed the opportunity to learn a little bit about this work and from each other. The next one that we're doing is 3 weeks from now. We have Joshua Mitchum on our team and Caleb Preston who are talking about unlearning sales and marketing in this age of AI. So two things that often commonly go together. But excited to have two adept operators in the room for a really good conversation. Thank you so much for everybody who's attended, and thank you so much, Sarah. You and I could talk for hours on this stuff.